Let's see his story.
Yeah, some happy days here. I'm really happy. So that's it. That's all there is left of it. For 3 years I had the pleasure of working with my dad in the pits. And a lot of lads I knew from school as well. Came here and followed the dads in the pit. And this is where 1,000 men worked. All factories now. Probably employs about 200 men as opposed to 1,000 men. It wasn't just me, it was lots of lads in this area that got up with their dads, went to a coal mine, did a shift, and we learnt the value of hard work. And when the pits went, we lost a lot of our community. We lost some of that work ethic which had been instilled in our families for generations and generations. But we can get that back. The hope is around the corner, and we're going to rescue this country, re-industrialise areas like this, places like Scotland, places like Wales. You know, we've got a few years of pain to come with this awful Labour government. The Reform Rescue Party is marching over the hill. Give people and their families hope that there is a future for the children and their grandchildren. That's it, it's that simple. There is nothing wrong with us Brits being proud of our history, our heritage and our culture. This country has been a gift to the world. I always say that, a massive gift. And if it wasn't for this great country and our ancestors, this world would probably be 50, 60, maybe 100 years behind what it is now. And we've got to stop giving it away.
Friends, we can do this, but we can only do it if we stand strong. The establishment absolutely hate us. They want us gone, but we're going nowhere. The mainstream parties are scared of us, and so they should be, because we're coming for them at every single ballot box in the country. I want my country back. The question is, do you want your country back?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Reform UK's Chief Whip and the Member of Parliament for Ashfield, Lee Anderson.
What a great... Thank you, conference. As always, it is indeed a pleasure to stand here before the People's Army. And I know we got a few people thrown out a few minutes back. Imagine that, 55 quid to get thrown out. What a bunch of idiots. Jesus. Whew. It gets worse. David Lammy. It seems that all you've got to do to become the Deputy Prime Minister of this country is go on Mastermind and get every single question wrong. Jesus Christ. But you might not like this next bit. I've got to defend Angela Rayner. Because I've been told by a good friend of mine that she did actually get sound financial advice from her financial advisor, Diane Abbott. I want my country back. Yes. Do you want your country back? Yes. Well, you've come to the right place then. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming, because it has taken the hard work and sacrifice of millions of Brits throughout the centuries to make these small islands the greatest place in the world to live. It really has. But in just a few short years, useless, spineless career politicians have done their best to give much of that away. But have no fear, Reform are here, and we will punish them. We will punish them at every single ballot box in the country. I grew up at a time when we were proud. We were taught to be proud of our history, our heritage, our culture. We were not ashamed of who we were or where we came from. And we should never be ashamed of who we are. We are Great Britain. Never forget that. Conference, mass migration, rising payroll taxes, and increase in the welfare payments has put 1 million young British people on the dole in this country. It's an absolute disgrace. It is not acceptable. There's also another reason why so many young people are jobless, and it's a cultural one. Politicians have forced us from being a nation of strivers to a nation that allows people to stay at home all day, possibly watching, I don't know, mindless daytime TV. I mean, it wouldn't be so bad if we had something good on television, something like the Jeremy Kyle show. I mean, quality TV that was, wasn't it? And what I want to know, Jeremy, is where's that lie detector machine? Because I want to borrow it next week and take it to Parliament for PMQs. Keir Starmer would run a mile, wouldn't he, as soon as that was switched on. I grew up in the 1970s. I never dreamt of being a politician. I dreamt of being a footballer, a fighter pilot, or a famous pop star. I wanted to be Elvis. That's what I wanted to be. But every morning at 5 a.m., my dreams were shattered by my dad's alarm clock going off as he would get up and go to work. I would watch him through my bedroom window, walk into the pit, just a few hundred yards away. I could see the other men on the street meet up with my dad, and they'd follow him, and they'd spend a full day underground, toiling. And a few hours later, I would go to my local school with my friend, Councillor Cox, who was in here somewhere. He's over there somewhere. He's up there. And I would sit with the other children in my class, and I knew that their dads were working with my dad underground, doing a shift underground. And that created a terrific bond between all of us in the village. And we were taught by some great teachers, some brilliant teachers, even male teachers in a junior school. Imagine that these days. These were men. Two of my teachers at my junior school had served in the Second World War. One had got a bullet wound on his leg, Mr. Swain. And we didn't have to call our teacher, well, we called our teachers Miss or Sir, and that was it. We didn't have to call them MX or any other pronoun. What a load of rubbish that is. I'll tell you what else we didn't have. We didn't have some 6'5" drag queen sat there reading fairy stories and confusing our children. Bloody weirdos. I tell you what, Conference, if any of them weirdos had been lurking around my school, they'd have been carted off to the funny farm and put in a padded cell where they belong. Absolute nonsense. We had proper teachers who knew about our community, and they felt a sense of pride that they were teaching the children of miners and factory workers. And when my dad had done his shift down the pit, we would often see him in our garden, tending to his vegetables. We had a fully stocked garden with vegetables, and at the bottom we had some chickens, and they gave us the eggs in return for a few scraps we gave them every day. That was our food bank. My parents didn't ask for handouts, they didn't complain, they just played the hand that life had dealt them. At the dinner table, my mum and dad, they would talk about their day at work, and my sisters and I would listen. They would talk about the people they'd worked with and the jobs that they were doing. For me, as a child, it was fascinating. Because there's far too many young people these days who have never heard an alarm clock go off, or sat around a dinner table listening to their parents talk about work. This may seem like a very small thing, but the impact on me was massive. It was the best education a young person could get outside of school. It taught me that parents get up early in the morning and they go to work to pay money, to pay the bills, to raise the family. And that's how it should be. If you're able-bodied, you should do your duty. You should go to work, do your bit for your family, your community, and your country. You know what? Back in the 70s, not working wasn't an option. I don't remember any men in my village not going to work. It would have been scorned upon. And the message from our parents all over our village was quite clear. When you leave school, you find a job or you find somewhere else to live. Simple as that. Now, that might sound a little bit harsh to some of the snowflakes of today, let me tell you, but it was a tough love that made sure we could fend for ourselves in the world, and it works, believe me. People didn't complain. It's true. People didn't complain about anxiety or stress or try and get diagnosed and get a sick note for 6 months with mental illnesses. They just went to work as their parents did before them. Hard work was in our DNA. Of course. Well, of course people had stress in their lives, but they just got on with it. And I'm sure my parents at some time would have had stress or anxiety, but they never gave up going to work and doing the right thing. And as my dad's alarm clock continued to ring every morning for years, it wasn't long before I was getting up with him to go to Sutton Colliery, and we'd do a shift together underground. And during my time in the pits, I learned some very valuable lessons from the men underground. They spoke their minds. They did not speak a politically correct language, and the only pronouns they addressed you with were 4-letter ones, believe me. That's how it should be. These men were hard-working family men who loved their family, their community, and their country, and so we should. There was a strong bond between the men that worked down the pits. It was a working-class bond. These men were aspirational. They wanted their children to do better in life than they had had. And that's how you measure progress in our communities. But guess what? Most of us voted Labour. But why vote Labour when we have different values? Values like hard work, aspiration, and the love of our family, community, and country. I'll tell you why we voted Labour. It's because we was all in closed shop unions and had a financial stake in the Labour Party. But nothing got better for us. It never got better. We were just useful idiots that bankrolled out-of-touch Labour politicians who forgot about us as soon as they got to Westminster. The Labour Party has always been the same. It's always been the same, the Labour Party. It only exists by keeping poor people poor and then blaming everybody else. Yeah. After years of working underground, I worked at our local Citizens Advice Bureau, where I saw real poverty and desperation firsthand. Desperate people caught up in the benefits trap. We would patch them up, sort out their debts, stop them from being evicted, get them extra benefits, etc. But this was not the solution. This was part of the problem. Because just 10 years later, I was seeing the sons and daughters of these people who were coming to see us with exactly the same problems. As a nation, we were going backwards. Blair and Brown, they're to blame for all this mess, all this nonsense. I'll tell you why. They introduced the tax credit system, which in the following years has led to people being trapped on welfare. Overnight, the tax credit system allowed people to stop working full-time and just work 16 hours a week for the same wage. This led to a massive gap in our labour market, and Tony Blair had another bright idea, which was mass uncontrolled migration to fill the job vacancies. So a generation later, we have 1 million Brits and their children, millions of Brits, should I say, and their children, who are trapped in the benefit system, a system that was meant to help them, not hinder. And it's not right that we squander billions on benefit payments to keep people at home. The best way out of poverty is through education, training, opportunities, and a bit of decent graft. Benefits should be a safety net, not a career option. Work, yes, true. Work should always pay more than benefits, which is why Reform UK will overhaul our benefit system and reward the workers, not the shirkers. Having some of that, aren't we? A Reform UK government led by Nigel Farage will re-industrialise the home of the Industrial Revolution. That's us. And I'll tell you what we will do. We'll get rid of that net zero nuisance, Ed Miliband, by scrapping net zero. He needs to go. We'll scrap the diversity roles and spend that money on frontline services, yes. And we will doge anything that requires taxpayers' money to function. And you know, who's sick of hearing about this £22 billion black hole? Anybody? I tell you what, I could pay that off in a day. I could sort that out in a day. Stop paying for David Lammy's flights and food. Ooh. That's the solicitor's letter in the morning from The Guardian or somewhere like, I don't know. You couldn't make it up, could you? We will show our young people what made Britain great. We will remind our young people, our children, about the Industrial Revolution. We will let our young people know that they are the future of this great country and make sure they have the right education, training and opportunities to make a good life in this country. We don't want to see our brightest and best leave. What a waste. Reform UK will put in measures that will show our young people that this is the best place on earth to work, live and raise a family. "40 years after I first went underground with my dad, I stand here as the Reform UK Member of Parliament for Ashfield. There's no hiding place for me in Ashfield. I live there, and I have to be part of a party that delivers for our families and our communities and our country. I've been that person who is down to his last fiver. I know what it's like to work 7 days a week underground to keep a family. I know what it's like to borrow a few quid off my mum and dad because I can't get through the week. I know what it's like to struggle. Which is why when I go in the Commons every single week, the Labour lot look at me with utter contempt. They dislike me. They know that I was the type of person that they were supposed to represent, but they didn't. They know that I will always stick up for my family, community and country, and they won't. Guys, it is a privilege to be born in this great country, and we must all repay that privilege by working hard and then passing our country on to the next generation and leave our country in a better state than when we arrived. That's our duty. Sadly, though, Conference, at this moment we are failing. This government is a disgrace and they need booting out of office at the first opportunity. Every single one of them. My journey has taken me from the pit to Parliament, but on the way, I've worked with some proper people doing proper jobs. I've sat in that pit canteen listening to people's concerns. I've sat in my local pub listening to people's concerns. I walked down the streets and talked to real people. I've worked with the homeless and people stuck in poverty, and I know what they all want. They want their NHS to work. They want their schools to work. They want good housing. They want our roads fixing. They want criminals locked up. They want our borders to be secure. They want the police force to do its job. They want the armed forces to recruit the best people. I could go on and on and on about this, but basically, you know what they want. They want their country back. Thank you, Conference.